class method here, camera looking at center coordinate from I coordinate, I altitude. So the I coordinate and the I altitude, that's where your camera is. Where in the world, okay, using the coordinates, latitude and longitude, your camera is, what is the altitude of your camera in meters, and then what point are you looking at? You see how that's a way to set your camera? So you can do that to set your camera. One thing that's really cool about setting your camera, when you move from one place to another, you can kind of move your camera up into space and it'll animate that and then come back down in the new place, and it really orients your user where they are on the planet as they go from location to location. Question? No. Okay. What about the region? What about where on the map we're seeing? Okay, so the region is set with this property in MK map view called region. It's an MK coordinate region. An MK coordinate region is a center coordinate, latitude and longitude, and then a span, latitude and longitude delta, how many degrees of longitude, how many degrees of latitude. That tells you what's showing in the map at any given time. Okay, and this is writable and readable, so you can set the map doing it, and you can also find out where it is now after the user's done pinching or whatever. You can also just have the map keep its current zoom and just move around by setting the center coordinate. Okay, this is all exactly what you would expect. This map class is super powerful. I mean, one of the more action-packed classes in all of iOS in terms of what it can do. And there's a ton of C functions to convert between, okay, this is just a view. Map view is a UI view. And of course, you've got map coordinates in latitude and longitude, and then you've got view coordinates in X and Y. So sometimes you want to convert between those two. So it's got a bunch of C functions for doing that, and a bunch of methods as well, so that you can kind of find out what's going on, where they're touching, what's causing things, etc. So there's a lot in the map view there. This map view delegate method, there's about 20 map view delegate methods. I can only cover the tiny few here, like view for annotation and did select annotation view. But another interesting one is did change region. The reason this is interesting, this gets called if the map is animating, moving around, changing the camera or something. When it's done, it'll be showing a new region. It'll send this message to you. Why is that important? Why would you want that? Well, because if you're going to do animation like I'm showing San Francisco and the user now wants to see New York, if you just say set to coordinate New York, it's going to go over to New York and the whole country is going to rip by in about a half a second. So it's not going to be much of an animation. But if you want to move your camera up over the United States a few thousand meters and then go back down, okay, you'll need to know when you get up to the top so that you can start the animation going down. And so region animated will get called when you get to the top. You start the animation to move the camera to the top. When it gets to the top and the region is set, it'll call you this, and the region will be the whole United States, and then you can start your animation and go back down. Okay? And really, for nice apps, you might go up, down to New York, and then drive down the street. Okay? It's kind of really cool animation. That each of those steps, you want to use this to go to the next step, not the completion handlers of the animation things. This is much better because this is going to have it's going to do all the rotation when everything's settled down. It's almost like the settle down, the did pause we had in the dynamic animator. Okay? So that's an important method to know if you're going to do good map animation. All right, so in addition to the map view, we also have searching. Okay? So local search, kind of like a geocoder, but lots more powerful. This basically lets you let your user specify a natural language query. Like here, I might create a search request for Ikes, okay? And I might search in a region, which is Stanford campus. And then I fire this off. Of course, this is going to go over the network. Not all this information is on your device. It's going to go over the network. It's going to do a fetch, it's going to figure this out, it's going to return to you and call you this completion handler. So you do it with completion handler, it'll call the completion handler later. And you're going to get an array of MK map items. Okay, MK map items are basically things that describe a place on the map. And they have inside of them an MK place mark, which is detail about a place on the map, like the postal code, what region it's in, things like that. MK map item is kind of cool because there's a method in it called open in maps with launch options. And if you send that to an MK map item, it will leave your app, launch the Maps app, and show it there. So if you don't want to have a map view and all that stuff, you can still use this local search and then switch over to the Maps app if you want to show them that particular location. Yeah.
So it's also The map, is that also gone over the network, or is that actually on your device?
Yeah, so the question is, what about the tiles of the map itself, all that map data? Yeah, that's clearly not on your phone as well. That's downloaded too. So when you first look at a place on the map, it's just going to be like a grid, kind of like the holodeck in Star Trek or whatever, right? Just a grid, and then it's going to fill in with the tiles. Okay, and depending on how fast your network is, that's how fast it's going to download it. So yeah, that's all happening though in the background. You don't even know. You have no idea what's going on. You can find out there are delegate methods that says, got this tile. You know, it'll tell you if you want to know, but generally you don't care. There's also a way to get directions from one place to another. So you just create this MK directions thing. You're going to specify an MK map item at the beginning, at the end, and it's going to, again, go asynchronously over the network and give you back a list of possible routes that you can take. And these routes are going to come back with text descriptions, you know, take Highway 101 for this much of whatever. And also they're going to come back with MK polylines. An MK polyline, exactly what you would think, it's a bunch of lines. And this polyline, you can see the blue line here, or the purple lines, it's basically a description of how to go from place to place on the map, which is really, really cool. But it does beg the question, if I got a polyline in hand, how do I put it on the map? How do I draw it on the map? And the answer is, we draw on the map using overlays. Okay? So overlays are essentially descriptions of some shape that you want to draw on the map. So a polyline would be one, but you can also do circles, you know, arbitrary polygons, things like that. And the way this mechanism works is you create this shape, like an MK polyline. You add an overlay. You see that add overlay? The level there is whether it's above the roads or just above the labels, which is kind of on top of everything in the map. So you could have the polyline be on the roads and have things like 280 symbol be above it, which looks really cool. But then the MK map view is going to ask you later, okay, now I need a renderer to draw this thing on the map, okay, an MK overlay renderer, which is a little bit like that MK annotation view, except for an MK overlay renderer is not a view, it's more of a mechanism for drawing on the map, and then that renderer will be used to render on the map. Now, these renderers come with iOS. There's a whole bunch of them: circle renderer, polyline renderer, polygon. There's a tile renderer. The tile renderer is cool because it just renders bitmaps. Okay, and you can actually use it to replace the data instead of the data that comes from Apple. So if you had your own custom map, you could have this tile in. It's a little bit involved because you're talking about being able to zoom in and out, and it has an API for that, but you could possibly replace it. Or you might just want to tile some image over a certain place in the world. And so all that stuff is built in with this MK shape stuff in MK overlays. So overlays are really pretty cool, and you can do a lot of stuff with them, so I encourage you to kind of look at that. Okay, so that's it for maps. I'm going to do a big demo of all this stuff so you can see all this stuff in action. But before I do that, there's another thing I'm going to do in the demo that I want to talk about briefly, which is embed segues. Okay, so far about segues, you know how to do push segues when you're a navigation controller. You know how to do replace segues in a split view, although we didn't demo that, and it's pretty rare to actually replace the detail or the master in a segue. We usually just leave the detail there and go look for it all the time, like we did in Photomania. Popover segues, we saw that last time, okay, where we segued to a popover. And here's another one called embed segues. And an embed segue is really cool. You create a UI view inside a view hierarchy of some view controller, and inside that UI view is the self.view of another view controller. Okay, so you basically take another view controller's self.view and embed it as a UI view inside another one. Okay, so that allows you to build pretty complex views and still divide up the responsibility for a rectangular area into MVCs. Okay, and I'm going to do this in the demo so you get a little better idea what we're talking about here. Xcode makes it really, really easy to do this. You just go to the object palette and you're going to find something down there called container view. You drag that container view out into the view you want, and then it's going to actually automatically create a little view controller with a segue to it. But you can control drag from this container to any VC you want to be embedded there. Okay? And then once you do that control drag, it's just like any other segue. It's just a segue. It has to be prepared right? Because it's going to be displaying something in there, presumably. But otherwise, it's exactly the same. And not only is that segue exactly like any other segue, the view, that container you see right there, that's just like any other UI view. So in the host view controller, you can set its dot hidden if you want to hide it. You can change its frame. Okay, you could animate its frame changing, moving around. You can do anything you want. It's just kind of this opaque UI view to you. It's part of your view hierarchy. You can take it out of the view hierarchy, put it back in. Okay, it's just that its contents are going to be drawn as the self.view of some other view controller. Okay. The timing, this is a little bit thing to be careful of, is the timing of setting things, because when does this embed happen? Okay. When does its prepare for segue happen, basically, relative to other things happening in that view controller that it's embedded in, like that thing's outlets being set, etc. And the answer is, it happens pretty early, okay, before outlet setting, just like all prepare for segues do. So a lot of times you're going to have to do whatever code you do in the prepare, also in your outlet setting, if they depend on each other. Okay, and we've already seen this in Photomania before. Anything you do in your prepare for segue that depends on an outlet, you're going to do it in prepare for segue. You might also do it in the outlet setter. Okay, so that whichever one happens second will do the actual work. Everyone understand what I mean by that? No? Yes? Who does understand what I mean by that? Nobody. Okay, well, okay, it's maybe a little hard to conceptualize without seeing it, so in the demo I'll talk about it again and hopefully it'll make sense. All right, so let's do this demo. This is a very big demo. I think I have enough time to do it all. Let me take my notes here, make sure, in case I forget something. Okay, so what are we going to do? We are going to start with Photomania, where we left off. So here's the exact Photomania we had before, where we left off. This time we're going to work in this iPhone, in the iPhone storyboard, and then we'll copy it over to the iPad storyboard. So we're kind of going back and forth working on each one. Today we're going to go work on the iPhone one. So what are we going to do here? So this, hopefully you recognize this, right? This is our storyboard. This is a bunch of photographers. We click on a photographer. We get all the photos by that photographer, currently in a table. So what I'm going to build is same UI here almost exactly, except for that instead of a table of the photos, I'm going to put a map of the photos up. Okay, with a pin for every photo by that photographer. So I'm going to need a photos by photographer map view controller instead of a photos by photographer core data table view controller. Okay, I'm still going to pull all this out about core data and everything, but we're not going to be doing a table view. Does that make sense, what I'm going to do? All right, so let's go ahead and create that view controller. So a map view controller is just a view controller, so I'm going to drag out a view controller here. We'll put it under here because it's going to be replacing this guy right here, which is the table view controller of it. Now, as with any view controller, I need a class for this. Right now, it's UI view controller, so I need a custom subclass. So let's go create that. And that custom subclass is going to be a regular old UI view controller. Oops, UI view controller. And I'm going to call it, to be consistent, photos by photographer map view controller. I'm getting to be pretty long names here, but I could call it map MVC if it's kind of weird. So we'll call it map view controller. All right, so photos by photographer map view controller. We'll put it where we put everything. We'll put it in with our controllers right there. We got that. In our storyboard, let's go ahead and set this thing to be a map view controller. Here it is, photos by photographer map view controller. Let's build the UI for this thing. Actually, before we do that, I always like to do my public API for any new class. The public API for this class is exactly the same as the public API for the photos by photographer core data table view controller. Okay, in fact, we just copy and paste it here. It's this thing, right?